Formula One is back. We've had the first round and we are ahead of the 2020 Styrian Grand Prix this weekend. And this is our second race week. It's absolutely crazy. We wanted Formula One for so long. It came around in round one and now we're into round two, and then one day we'll be at the end of the season. It's absolutely crazy. But let's get away from actual on-track racing and get back to one of our favourite series, fast growing on this channel, and we hope that you guys are enjoying it as well. And of course, this is our Agree or Disagree series. This is number 10. We've done 10 episodes of these, double digits. It's crazy. So that's around 60 opinions, bold, crazy comments that we've had from you guys, and of course we discussed them on this episode. And of course today's going to be no different. Last week we did an Austrian themed one. Of course we're heading into Austria again for the Styrian Grand Prix, of course just the Austrian Grand Prix round 2 renamed. Next week we'll do a British theme, but of course then round 4, which will be another British one, we'll come back to here. We hope you're enjoying the series, as I've just said that we are as well. So without further ado, let's jump into this episode, and let's start with our first comment. Jordan, do you want to tell everyone what is this Twitter statement, what is this bold prediction, and yes, and of course, do we agree or disagree, and why?
Yes, so the first one comes in from Jack Milton. Once again, he appeared on last week's Agree or Disagree as well. And actually, he's just started his own YouTube channel as well, so go and check that out if you haven't already. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And also, he's a fellow Geordie as well. So the Geordies are taking over F1 YouTube, really are. And again, he'll probably require subtitles, just like you will with us. He says, Gunter Steiner is the worst team principal on the grid. Fair tactics is nowhere to manage people. Now, we have actually discussed about Gunter Steiner before on a previous Agree or Disagree, and a lot of people were on the same wavelength with us. And I'm going to kick things off, and I'm going to say Agree straight away.
And I'm also going to say Agree.
Agreeing on the first one. I think we were pretty much saying last time that Gunter Steiner has really no leadership skills, or he has like... he hasn't got anything going for him at the moment. I mean, you might know what he's doing in terms of keeping everyone together in a way. But what Jack said there about the fear tactics is like when we've seen it in Drive to Survive, him kind of screaming at K-Mag and not so much screaming, but shouting at K-Mag and Grosjean. And I think that's when you kind of know you've lost your cool and you've lost your control over your pupils. Let's say if you want to call them that, in that elaboration, but. In like shouting on at people, it's not exactly the professional manner to go on to, and if you're being shouted at, you're going to lose respect for that person for whatever reason, and and maybe he just has like no skill of being able to manage drivers or manage whoever, and therefore they're not going to be like, right, okay, then I'm not going to race for this guy because he treats me like like what, he talks to me like what, talk to me on a professional scale like an adult, and then I'll sit down and think about it. Now, of course, it is frustrating what has been going through, because in Gunter Steiner's defence, he's got a job to do. He's got a job to maintain the team as a top midfield team and challenge, and push the team forward. Because if he doesn't do that, he's going to be out of a job. Because if he's not living up to expectations and not hitting objectives, Gene Haas will just look for somebody else. So he's under immense pressure to do that. Now, if you look at the likes of Toto Wolff and Christian Horner and Binotto, and maybe not Binotto, but Seidel at McLaren, Andre Seidel, you don't see them shouting and bawling at their drivers. They're just maybe behind the scenes if they do something. Because I remember Horner said that he had a massive go at Ricciardo and Verstappen after their crash in Baku 2018, which you would, because two drivers have collided. You're going to be annoyed, so you are going to raise your voice. But not all the time, like you're seeing with Gunter Steiner, and it's just the times, just the way he comes across in interviews. He's just like, where are you going with this, mate? I don't really know what exactly you're on about here, and I don't know, maybe just Haas are slowly declining and going backwards, and that might not be Gunter Steiner's fault, but I think he's got to I think he has lost respect of the drivers. I think they've been there for a bit too long, and maybe they're just like, mate, just not bothered anymore, just don't want to race for you, and maybe putting someone else in there, either change Steiner or change the drivers, and maybe you could see some sort of form. But ultimately, I think Gunter Steiner he's not exactly anybody that he doesn't strike me as a Toto Wolff in any kind of way, or a Christian Horner, someone who is a good team leader, because for me, I just don't think he has any leadership skills whatsoever. Lyle, you also said agree on that note. Yeah, Gunter Steiner, he's almost become a meme, hasn't he, because of what's going on in Drive to Survive, hasn't he?
Yeah, not a good meme as well. Yeah, you said there, Drive to Survive for sure. That's definitely the picture he's painted on that. Kind of also I like the school, well, I don't know if you said school teacher, but like the school teacher analogy, like if you're shouting, you're not going to have respect.
Exactly.
And I had a physics teacher like that who lost respect on like the first day, and then just, it got worse for him. I'm not going to say his name, protect you. But there's nothing about him in every single lesson. He had no respect and people just shouted at him. But, I'm not saying that I did it as well, just to hold my hand up. I might have been good at school, you never know. Anyway, but yeah, I like that that comparison. Yeah, Drive to Survive, I mean, it's not everything, of course, but the picture that he paints is just that he's a very shouty, bossy kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And actually, I kind of felt a little bit sorry for Roman Grosjean, because in Series 2, it felt like Roman was treated like the outsider. Like it was Roman would always crash, Roman would make the mistakes. K-Mag was the man. Actually, there's a bit in Drive to Survive. It's actually this one's Series 1. It's called Keeping Your Head. And they go out for a team lunch, and obviously it's about Roman. It starts off Roman Grosjean talking about his crash in Spa. And the team lunch that's done in Paul Ricard, a home race of Roman as well, is done. And Gunter invites everyone but Kev Magnussen, and he even makes a few jokes about it, and you think, oh, it's it's hilarious and all that. But I'm like, that's not a good team principle. And again, there, he said about Christian Horner and stuff, Toto Wolff, they are nice people. They know that they have a team around them. But the main thing is that Gunter Steiner, okay, he might be a good guy. He does look like he's a good guy. He looks like he knows what he's talking about. He has worked with Gene before, and of course in the Haas automotive industry in America. But, and I talked about this in the preview as well, Haas are a team that really needs a strong 2020. And, Roman and K-Mag, they aren't the strongest drivers, and the car is not reliable and is not good, has had problems and things like that. And Gunter Steiner might be a good team principal, but I don't think he's good enough to lead Haas in the direction that they need to be. I think it's probably better that they had somebody else, like, again, you said there, Andreas Seidel, who was brought into McLaren, replacing, Zach Brown had a hold on the team. He was good again. He had renovated things from, I don't know who was before him, who had people like Fernando Alonso and things like that. But then Andreas came in and just overnight almost made this big boom in McLaren and changed a lot of things. Gave Lando and Carlos, to be honest, more freedom in the car. And I would say Steiner's one of the best team principals in the paddock. And, just look at what he's achieved. McLaren got their first podium in over 5 years last year. So Gunter, going back to him, he just doesn't look like the guy to lead Haas in the direction that they need to go. That's not what makes him bad. But I just, his attitude, what he's portrayed on and Drive to Survive and things like that. And again, I know that's not everything, but from what I've seen, is if that's what he does go on like, I would not want that. I know for a fact that, after Spain 2016, Toto Wolff said he lost his cool with the drivers. He kind of went a little bit ballistic, but we don't know the full extent of what happened in what they call the treehouse. And I don't think Toto Wolff would ever let what Gunter did, for example, on Drive to Survive. We all know that they followed Mercedes round in Germany 2019 when obviously they had an abysmal race. He never really lost his composure. Yes, he was angry. Yes, he swore a few times. Yes, he banged his fist on the table, poo a table. But he never went on like Gunter Steiner did. And obviously, as Jordan said there about Baku, Christian Horner swears once and shows his outrage at the start of one of the episodes. But Gunter Steiner goes on like that. After I forgot what race it was, but he takes them both into the hospitality area. He shouts at them both, kind of like a parent shouting at two little kids, and then that's where K-Mag kicks the door down. And you just think you don't need that in a team principal. So that's my reasons. I do need to think he needs to get more of a hold on the team, and then just more of a hold on leading the team in the right direction. I don't think he is the strongest guy there. And we might be looking at, he might not be the worst, but he is definitely one of the worst. And it looks like all the other teams, whether they're at the back like Claire Williams or Frederick Vasseur, or you're at the front like Toto Wolff and Christian Horner, it looks like he is just nowhere near that kind of the democracy leading kind of team principle that I think Haas need to be. So anyways, we've agreed on the first one together. We need to stop doing that. I like it when we disagree and stuff. But obviously, Gunter Steiner, not a great team principal. So the second comment comes in from Uzair Saeed, again, someone who's commented on our predictions. I think he's been on every single one, or almost every single one, so obviously, big up, man.
Thank you.
And obviously he's left quite a long one as well to get started. So let's go into it. The V10 era is massively overrated. The majority of the races in the early 2000s were extreme and boring and were viewed as rose-tinted glasses because of the sound. The V8 era, 2006 to 2013, is the most entertaining era in F1's history and contains the largest amount of great races. So to summarise that, V10s, the loud... To be honest, it always comes to mind me, for some reason, Fernando Alonso at Renault. That always just tips me for V10s, but the very loud, earpiece and noise is overrated, and the V8s were the best. I'm going to say... I don't really know about the V10s, but for sure, I'm going to say the V8s. Definitely agree.
Again, I wasn't really through the V10 era. I never lived through that as well. Obviously, I've just seen the V8 era. But I'm also going to say agree in the sense that relation to what you said there about the whole V8 situation, because we were able to live through that.
I want to start by saying something that a lot of people say, and I feel like now this has become kind of a Formula One's go-to kind of thing, and a lot of people say this without really knowing the meaning behind it. A lot of people say, V6 are terrible, sounds crap, all this is rubbish, let's go back to the V10s. But I've said this on many times, and I think I said this on one of the episodes, and I was quite like, kind of said it with a bit more, like, me. We were talking to somebody, and I said a bit more mean in my voice, because I was like, this is my reason, this is my opinion, that no one really seems to get. And that the fact is that, like, Jordan will know as well, when we go to races in the V8 era, it's loud. You do need earplugs. I mean, yes, you could probably stand for like a lap or two without earplugs, but like if you were on the start, for example, you would need earplugs. The V6 era is the best because you can go to an entire race, and we've been on the start-finish line. You can be there. You can listen to the entirety of the engines revving up and F2 and F3 and, of course, F1, and you don't need earplugs. The V10s, you would definitely, and that's the thing, you saw everyone in the crowd wearing earplugs and stuff. So in that way, I would think V6 racing is probably better to watch if you were actually in the stands. Of course, also topple that with V6s are actually faster in terms of lap time because the V10s, they were so loud, but they had one less gear, less revs, and they weren't as good as they were now. And of course, they did burn a lot of fuel, and it was a massive problem for the world. And of course, that's why we changed down to V8 and then down again to V6s. V10s looked good, the cars looked very good. Of course, if you do know your F1 history, you will think it would have been a good thing to live through, but I don't think it was overrated. Of course, the years that are listed is mainly things like Michael Schumacher, of course, the dominant in the Ferrari, and of course, Fernando Alonso breaking through into that. But the V8s, really, really amazing seasons. Of course, I think then that's Sebastian Vettel breaking through, Braun, having that amazing regulation, things like that. Mm-hmm. I would have thought they were the best, not just for the racing we had, but for the cars. The cars looked incredible. The engines were really good, quite reliable as well. We had things like, obviously we had the introduction of DRS, and that's not involved with the engine, but we had things like KERS as well, the kinetic energy recovery system, which aided in the car, which was another kind of secondary power that went alongside the engines. Mm-hmm. So we did see a lot of innovations in that way, but the racing was really, really good. The cars were loud, they were ferocious, they were fast, they were faster than the V10s. Mm-hmm. And as I said, they were, in terms of listening to it actually at the circuit, I would say they were pretty good to listen to. And yeah, I really liked it. I don't think there's much to say out of that. So in the thing, he says that that they had a lot of great races. Yes, they had some great races. They had some amazing cars. Of course, we all have to say 2012, the 7 different winners in 7 different races. And the teams that all had a shot in that. And even Williams had a shot, of course, past Maldonado winning in Spain, beating outright Fernando Alonso. That was a great year for the cars. And again, with those V8 era cars, there was Cosworth also that was added into the mix. They were quite reliable in terms of the level playing field. Now, of course, Mercedes' power unit is running away from Ferraris and Renaults and Hondas. But then it was quite a level playing field. Of course, Renault was the superior one. Of course, got Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull Racing 2, 4 and 4. But it was quite a level playing field. It was simple as well to understand. So again, like we've said before in the episodes, new fans coming into F1, the hybrid system in the MGU-K and the MGU-H is very complicated to understand, but the engines were more simple back in the day. Great racing, good cars. In terms of the overrating of V10s, I wouldn't say it was massively overrated. The only thing that I can think of is, as I've just said at the start there, the comparisons of everyone saying, let's bring back the V10s. Why? They burn so much fuel. That was all lit the engine. There wasn't anything else to play with. So if you weren't the fastest on speed, that was it. You were done. Again, that's what might have actually put Ferrari, in the best seat, because if they made the engine the best, that was it. They didn't have to worry about anything else. There was no DRS, there was no KERS, there was no ERS, nothing like that. They were very loud, and actually they were slower than the V8 and the V6s together. So the second part of that, for sure, I agree. The V10 era, I'm not too sure, but I'm going to say I'm sitting on the fence with that. Overrated, underrated. I just say normal racing, but I do definitely think that if I was given the choice of what to bring back, I would say bring back the V8s, Jordan, because V10's just a bit too loud for me. And of course, had some incredible racing, but remember, at the end of the day, it was down to some of the drivers that we had, but the cars were absolutely incredible. You said agree also. So yes, V10, of course. Yeah, you said we got into watching the V8s. In the first race we went to was Silverstone 2010 British Grand Prix V8 time. So again, we've been to 2 races, V8 and V6s. So yeah, you said agree. Why is that? Why do you think the V8 was so good? And yeah, do you think the V10s were overrated?
Well, like I said at the start, I wasn't really a big F1 fan in the V10, so I don't really necessarily knew what why it went down. I believe there would have been some classic races in the V10s, but in terms of seasons, there was a lot of dominant eras because of the Michael Schumacher era. I think there was one Fernando Alonso era, Fernando Alonso season. I think it was 2005 was the last year of the V10s, and then obviously when the V6s came in. You had 07, 08 were brilliant years. 2010 was a really good year, and then you had 2012, and I think the more or less not so brilliant years. Were good years, but not so much like competitive. You had 06, Alonso did really well. 09, Braun had a good start, and then Red Bull caught them, well, nearly caught them anyway. Then 11 was Sebastian Vettel's year, and then 2013 as well. Sebastian Vettel just totally dominated it in the second half of the season. And that was, that was the era that we got into, like we said, Lyle. And the V8 sounded absolutely amazing. The V10s do sound really good as well. That's really good. But what I list off there, like there was a lot of close seasons, and we had 2 off the bounce in 07 and 2008. I think competitiveness was like 2003. I think might have been a really competitive, like a close year. I think Kimi was quite close at winning the title. Ferrari nearly lost it, I think it was. But then you look at 2002, 2004, Ferrari just unstoppable. You just couldn't. That was it. In like previous years, Ferrari were just the team to beat. No one. I think Williams had a sniff in a couple of races, but other than that, it was Ferrari on top. Then when you move it in the V8, you had McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull, Renault. Even Lotus as well. If you want to throw Lotus into the mix, not for for race wins and being up there, and it that changed everything, and it made we had some really good classic races as well, like 2011 Japan off the top of my head, 2012 2011 Canada, not Japan, Canada, 2011 Canada, Jensen Button's win, 2012 Brazil, absolutely amazing Grand Prix that we had there, and like what Lyle said before, 2012 was a brilliant season, went all the way to the wire between 2 drivers. In 2010 we had 4 or 5 drivers going for the title at the very last race. I mean, Vettel didn't lead the championship till the very last race. Well, after the race when he won the championship, and that's incredible for me. So, in terms of overrated, I don't really want to class them as overrated because I didn't live through it. But certainly, I do want to give praise to the V8 era, and I think for me that was definitely my favourite era of Formula 1.
So, John, just to quickly break in there, people do say, as I've just said there, people say, let's bring back the V10. I mean, people say bring back the V12s like Sebastian Vettel did last year in Russia, but a lot of people say bring back the V10s.
Yeah.
Would you? So if you had the choice of, I mean, of course, yeah, you've got the environment factors, but if you could take those out for a little bit, if someone gave you the option of what engines to bring back, what would you do? Would you stay with the V6s? Would you bring the V8, or would you go V10s or even V12s?
Personally, I would go for the V8 because, like I said, I lived through that era. I miss that sound very much. The V10s sounded amazing, of course they did. Very screamish and absolutely incredible. I think the V12s. I think people do class the V12s as overrated because they kind of ate themselves to death. From what I heard, they were overpowered and it was just crazy at the time, and they were unreliable. The V10s, but I think a lot of people would say the V10s, but only if you lived through it. If I had a choice, I would 100% say V8s, and maybe a few people may agree or disagree, which is a good thing because that's what the episode's called. Then so be it. It's all about different eras, like what we have included as well beforehand. If depending on the era that you lived in, it just depends what you feel is the best. Because if you grew up watching, I don't know, Ferrari dominate as well, then you're gonna have a good thing for Ferrari or whatever. You know, if you live through the V10s, you're gonna think they're the best. If you live through the V8, you're gonna think they're the best. So it just depends of what era you come from.
Yeah.
So the third point or opinion of the episode comes in from the Pit Kid. Now he's also made an appearance on Agree or Disagree before. He says Sergio Perez should be in a big team by now instead of, say, Alex Albon. Straight away, instantly agree. I mean,
for Alex Albon, I'm on the fence, but for Sergio Perez alone, like Jordan, yes, agree.
yeah, absolutely. And obviously, this is nothing against Alexander Albon. He's a really good driver. He hasn't yet proven himself properly. I want to see him in a full season with Red Bull, see how he does, see how he handles with the pressure alongside Max Verstappen all season long. Can he do better than Gasly? Yeah, I think he will. Sergio Perez is a quality driver. You know, one of the most, I nearly said one of the most underrated driver on the grid. Absolutely by a country mile. And actually, I seen a tweet by Aldas last week, and he also said what I'm saying here. You know, Perez is the most underrated driver on the grid. Then he also put a tweet underneath his and said that Perez has outscored or outfinished his finished ahead of his teammate or beaten his teammate more times than any other driver on the grid. I think he made an example of Hamilton lost to Rosberg in 2016. Perez hasn't lost to a teammate since 2014, and he's come up against some really good drivers. You know, Nico Hülkenberg being an example when he was at Force India. Ocon, a young up and coming, really good driver alongside Perez. Perez still beat him no problem. Lance Stroll is Lance Stroll. Moving on. In Racing Point are looking very strong at the moment, which is really really good for for Sergio Perez. He deserves to have a really strong car. All right, he had a stint at McLaren, which came at the wrong time for Sergio Perez because McLaren were going through a transitional phase at this point. They were moving on from Mercedes power to Honda power in the next couple of years, and 2013 was just a bad year, and he did get dropped. And I've said for a while he shouldn't have dropped him for whatever reason. It wasn't that bad, but looking back, it was a good thing that they did drop him, because otherwise he would have to live through the Honda era with McLaren again. But that's just in hindsight. At the time, who would have known it would have been that bad. Force India was a really good move for him, and that's where he is today under the name of Racing Point. Next year, Aston Martin. And by the way, we are recording this before the Austrian Grand Prix. So if he does end up winning the Grand Prix by a surprise margin, then that maybe that's why we're not bigging it up as much as what we would be. People
be watching this and going, he's like the next. He's just won the race. He's
just won the race.
Like 35 seconds. What are you doing?
What's going on?
He's lapped his teammate.
In practice, he looks really strong as well. The car looks really, really good. So he does deserve to be at a top team. If I had the choice of Albon or Perez, I would choose Perez because he's got experience and he has got speed. Albon needs time to develop as well. Maybe Albon isn't quite there yet, but I think Albon will eventually get there as well. So I do hope Racing Point can get a really competitive car to Sergio Perez. When they come to Aston Martin next season, I hope that they can develop that car a little bit more. Again, the chassis do stay the same. The chassis freeze for 2020, for 2021. Then when the new regs come in 2022. Let's see what he can do. Lyle, it's Sergio Perez. He is one of the most underrated drivers on the grid today. Really good driver, really solid driver. He's put in some amazing performances, especially in his days at Sauber, and now currently at Racing Point. Force India back in the day. He does deserve to be in at least a top team or have a really good car at his disposal.
Yeah, he definitely does, Jordan. One of my views on Perez is that he should have stayed at McLaren. I think McLaren. I would have loved to see Sergio at McLaren. As you said there, big team. I mean, obviously, yes, he'd have gone through the 100 days, but he'd never known that. And again, it might have worked out differently because we all know Fernando and the 100 days and how just sour grapes that was. Ugh. Like Fernando every time he came on the radio, he was moaning. And Jensen just got on with it. You never know. It could have been a Jensen and a Sergio, and quite a nice relationship back in the day. Of course, 2013 it was, at McLaren, a top team at that point. And Sergio was hailed as a basically what's the word? I was going to say predecessor, but that's the person before, isn't it? Like the post-decessor, that's not a word. The person to follow Lewis Hamilton, obviously Lewis went to Mercedes. The person to fill Lewis Hamilton's shoes was Sergio Perez. Of course, that didn't work out. They brought in Magnussen, who again was a big up-and-coming talent, and then Fernando Alonso, again, that was good. But I'm thinking if Sergio stayed there, 2013, yes, it was a bit of a slog, but we all know it was the car. Even Jensen didn't do too well. 2014 came around, V6s came in, McLaren lost sponsors, and kind of again became kind of more of a rebirth McLaren. Sergio might have done well. You never know. He might have got on the podium just like Kev Magnussen did. He might have held that all too famous statistic. Obviously that stood, for 2,072 days before Carlos Sainz beat it, which obviously was McLaren getting their podium in 2014. We never know that might have happened with Perez. I do think that would have been a good fit for Sergio to stay there because again, I was like Jordan. As soon as he left McLaren after 2013, and then he went back, not back to Force India because of course he drove for Sauber, but he went back to the main field, the midfield, and that's where I was looking, I was thinking, McLaren, what have you done? Also, Sergio, what have you done? But mainly McLaren, you've kind of also ruined this guy's career, this budding, promising guy's career. He had an incredible season at Sauber in 2012. But also just moving on, as Jordan said there, going I keep saying back to Force India, but back to the midfield, to Force India, then became Racing Point, and then obviously next year Aston Martin. And again, he said beating his teammates. Nico Hülkenberg, big challenge there. Yes, Nico never won a race, pole position once. 2 fastest laps in his 10-year career. It never made it into much, but he was a fast driver, and for Sergio to beat him was incredible. And of course Ocon and then Lance Stroll. Sergio definitely does deserve to be at the top team. I remember a few years ago there was talk about him possibly going to Ferrari. Of course, when the transition of Fernando Alonso leaving, well, actually, there we go. Fernando Alonso left at the end of 2014. That would have been a great time for Sergio to get into Ferrari. Of course, if they were interested. But yes, unfortunately, getting kicked out of McLaren after a bad season with them didn't help in the Force India car. In 2014 wasn't too bad, but wasn't obviously as good as like a Ferrari driver was, for example. Speaking of Racing Point, and actually it's quite a Racing Point orientated episode, we have the next statement which comes in about Racing Point. It comes from A Doctor Who, which again he's also put in a comment. I think we've read some out, but he's definitely been there every single time. So obviously thank you very much, A Doctor Who, for that. He says Racing Point's it's quite poshly worded as well. Racing Point's philosophy for their 2020/2021 car will mean that they will do well in the early stage of the season, but will struggle in 2021. Now, 2020-2021, I don't know if he means the car might be kept for next year, because of course we might have a shorter season, but let's go from the 2020, of course, where we are right now. So it means a fast 2020 start, and then struggling at the end of this year. And of course, Racing Point very popular because they have been in the media so much. And of course, all the allegations have come out from winter testing and in Austria the first round, and of course we'll follow them, is that the car they are using, the Racing Point, whatever it's called, is an exact copy of the W10 Mercedes 2019 edition. So of course, a lot of news is around that. So to that statement, I'm going to say, well, back on what I just said before, disagree.
I'm going to say agree.
The reason I'm going to say that is because I have a lot of faith in Racing Point this year. A lot of faith. And again, the man that we just mentioned there, Sergio Perez, I'm all too confident he's going to have a really, really good season. I don't think it's a copy of the Mercedes, or even if it is, it's not like they have done anything bad. It's not like copying someone's homework. They're still going to have a different season. And of course, Mercedes are going to run away with it like they will do normally. They have DAS. Racing Point don't have DAS, for example. That's just one thing. They don't have Toto Wolff or Lewis Hamilton. That's another thing. It will be, of course, a different career for them. Racing Point look strong this year. I think that they do. Sergio Perez is a good driver in that car. I can see them being consistent, and I do want them to break into the... It's not really much of a... I don't really have so much to say about this. It's just more of like what I think, what I want the team to do. And that is, I think, Racing Point are going to have a good season. It just looks like a strong car. And of course, if I am going to say, yes, it is a bit of a copy, or it is a full copy of the Mercedes car, then it can only be great, because that W10 was so good. And even the W1 back from 2010 could probably still... Actually, that's not fair, because that's a V8 car. The 2014 car, Mercedes, could still probably beat like most cars in the 2020 grid. So if Racing Point have done a copy of the car, then I'd be happy with that. But I do think the team's good. I do think it is a midfield team breaking at the top team like McLaren. I'm definitely going to say that McLaren and Racing Point are their big, that's their big rivals this year. And for example, again, practice to that we can only go off. Carlos Sainz got fourth, I think it was this morning, and then Sergio Perez got third. And again, Lance Stroll and Lando Norris, they were both up there. So it's going to be a massive tussle between those two teams. And yeah, I think Racing Point will have a good season. I can see it being consistent. But I mean, there's all the possibility that they do have a good start of the season and struggle towards the end. But of course, it matters. It depends, how hectic the season is, where we go as well. Some tracks, of course, like at altitude and things like that, might affect the cars. Mexico City, of course, this race here in Austria, and of course, the Styrian Grand Prix Austria as well. They're at altitude. They of course do affect the cars in some ways. But we've seen some good performances from Racing Point, so I'm seeing that they're gonna have a good season. So you said agree. Yes. So you agree. So obviously you think Racing Point will have a good season this year and fall off the pace at the end of the season and even into 2021. So yes, why do you think that? And of course, after all the hype that you put about Sergio Perez, why are you now shooting down his team?
I'm not shooting down the team, but basically the car is a direct copy of the W10. Of course, any data transfer between the two teams, it would make the car illegal. But all Racing Point have done is probably took some photos or got some photos online of the front and the rear of the W10 and just went, okay, what have they done? Okay, let's just do this. Let's just do it and put it in the wind tunnel and just do it our way. And that's what they've done. Because I like Racing Point's philosophy of if we can't beat them, join them. And that's exactly what they've done. And I think that's a good way forward. Yeah, of course, the car doesn't have DAS. That's because it's the old car. Nobody would have thought of DAS because Mercedes were the only ones to think of DAS. Very, very clever.
It depends who their mole was. It depends who they had, inside the camp. It would be incredible, John. Just quickly, it would be incredible if again, we haven't seen the race. I'm just spitballing. And it might even happen in this weekend again in Austria. But just imagine, we're heading into race day for the first race. And then Racing Point do have DAS. It's never told anymore.
They just rock up with DAS.
We know that.
They might rock up with DAS.
Or they go out for drinks with Mercedes and find out how
yeah,
it
exactly. But obviously DAS is banned from next season, so this is the only season we can see DAS in use.
Yeah.
So of course they won't have it in there next year either. But yeah, Racing Point this season at the start they will be strong. But I think as time goes on, I think they might just slowly start slipping away because they're not going to make much development. Now, the idea behind this was this was supposed to be the last year of the current regulations in terms of the chassis before we moved on to the newer cars for 2021. But because of the global situation at the moment, they're having the chassis freeze for 21, and then the new rules will come in 2022. So the idea originally was for Racing Point to go, right, okay, let's build a carbon copy of the W10. Let's race it for this season. We won't do much development because we're going to fully concentrate on 2021. So they will be strong at the start, but hopefully their points accumulated at the start will be enough to kind of get them, fourth, maybe even fifth, and then they might look a bit, they might look the 6th, 7th fastest towards the end, but in 21, and when the new regs come in, then they would be ahead of the field, and then hopefully getting the ball rolling and maybe pushing a chance for the championship. But that isn't going to be the case, and then for 21, they're going to have the same chassis, maybe a few minor little tweaks here and there, but I think now they're in a bit of a problem where we've got this car, but we can't do much in terms of development because we can't make a brand new chassis. I don't think they can't make a carbon copy of the W11. They maybe can implement a couple of things from the W11 into their version of the W10, but by then the car's going to be 2-year-old, which is, it might not be as efficient as what it is, after being 1-year-old. So the final opinion my penultimate opinion, final opinion from my end, comes in from the Purple Sector, a nice little YouTube channel on the right at the moment. They say Lance Stroll isn't as bad as everyone makes out. Now, Lance Stroll is, of course, everyone's favourite driver. I know that from a fact. Josh Revel, a fellow YouTuber, of course, he absolutely loves Lance Stroll. He's a big, don't tell him this, but he's a big Lance Stroll fan. That's our little secret. Don't tell him. Don't tell you. I told him. I'm going to say Lance Stroll isn't as bad as everyone makes out. I'm going to keep it a full house, and I'm going to say agree.
Oh, we're agreeing too much. I'm going to say agree as well.
Now, I'm not going to blabber on about Lance Stroll for much because, quite frankly, I've told people I don't really have an opinion on Lance Stroll. He's just met to me. Like, he hasn't really proven to me. He just hasn't proven anything to me yet that he is worthy to be in Formula One. Like, he's had his little moments here and there. You know, we've seen him in qualifying in some races, and that's something he needs to improve on, especially this season when he's got a really good car at his disposal. Is it good enough to be Perez? No, that's a fact. But he's not the worst driver on the grid, in my opinion. And he is a decent driver. He's F1 worthy, of course he is. But he's always going to have that thing of, oh, his dad owns the team, he's only there for the money, and blah 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 blah. All right, but at the same time, he does have driver skill at his disposal. He can drive that car. Okay, then let's say you do better than those. Oh, he's only in there for money. All right, go on then. Let's say you do better. Yes, there should be other drivers on the grid who maybe did fall through the cracks of, you know, the rookies, the junior categories, and maybe didn't get to Formula One, but Stroll did. Maybe there are better drivers that have missed their opportunity to go into Formula One, but I'm pretty sure not every single best driver that's ever existed has ever went to Formula One, the pinnacle of motorsport itself. And I think this is a really good year for Stroll to prove himself to the F1 fans, and I think we did mention this in our season preview of drivers to watch this season. Lance Stroll is going to be one of those drivers. Like, he's got a big point to prove that, you know, he can, you know, he is worthy of being in Formula One. He is worthy of being at that team. And he knows if he doesn't perform, he is going to be pushed out of that team. Because if he doesn't do well in Racing Point, miss out on 5th position by 10 points, and those 10 points of losing were down to Lance Stroll, you know, then the team's lost out on $20 million, let's say, for example. And I know Lawrence Stroll isn't exactly strapped for cash, but at the same time, it's not all of his money going into the team. It's a business. He has to run it as the business. And if he's not making money, or if he's losing money, then he needs to find a solution how to make money, stop losing money. And if it means sacking his son, I'm sorry, he's going to have to do it. But if Stroll can prove himself, and, you know, keep up with Perez, keep up scoring points, do well in qualifying, do well in the races, stay out of trouble, then why not? Why can't he stay in Formula One? If he can prove himself, go for it, Stroll. So I think he is capable of doing that. If he does have a bad season this season and he's still way off the pace, maybe it is time to drop him and go, okay, Stroll, you've had your chance, give someone else a go. Who that other driver would be remains to be seen. Let's see for our 2021 predictions for when that comes around. Lyle, again, you also said disagree as well. Where are you standing with Sergio Perez, with Lance Stroll? You know, because obviously Lance Stroll is, like I said, is everyone's favourite driver. We all know this. But like, yeah, you know, you've had your say as well about Lance Stroll with this whole dad owning the team. You know, he's got to prove himself in Formula One, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. I said agree, like Jordan. Yeah, so we both said that obviously he's not as bad as he's made out to be. I mean, first thing is money, of course. Dad owns the team. That being said, also as well, it's another kind of thing I think a lot of people say when they don't really, you know, get Formula 1 too much. A little bit like the V10s, like, you know, money makes you good. It doesn't. And again, like Jordan just said there, you know, if we give you, like, I don't know how much it gets, you know, $30 million or whatever, will you become world champion? Will you be the best? No, you won't. You know, and there's a lot of people that have had money in the past but haven't been good drivers and they've been canned. Others being, yes, of course, there has been good drivers who haven't had that money and unfortunately they've been canned as well. It works both ways. Lance has proved himself many times by winning different championships, things like that, to prove that he is worthy of being in Formula 1. I think he skipped Formula 2, didn't he? He won Formula 3, Asia Series, and a few things like that. So again, of course, he was excelled a little bit into that seat, but, you know, he got into Formula 1, and the first thing you do when you're in Formula 1 is to stay there. You know, had a great race in Baku, of course, in his first season with Williams. He had a teammate, Sergio Perez, who he bested. He was the top dog at Williams. And he showed everyone that he wasn't there for the money. Because again, like, he came in there, and I know there's been a lot of drivers who have been linked with money, but we've never seen anyone like that ever in Formula 1 for a very long time who's come in with that amount of money, you know, basically bought Williams. Of course, now it's a norm, unfortunately, like, you know, Mr. Latifi and Mr. Russell even buying the seat and stuff, and of course, well, actually Mr. Wolf, not Mr. Russell, Mr. Wolf buying Williams' George Russell's seat. He fought tooth and nail in those seasons with Williams. I was pretty happy. He came to Force India, which became Racing Point, and yet he was a good competitor with Sergio Perez, again building up the team. His dad came in, we all thought, I think as soon as his dad came in, that's when all of the eyes turned on Lance. Some people were like, that's amazing, you've got a great dad, he's helping you out on the team. You should have a good team because it's your dad running the helm. It's just easier to communicate with him. He will know what you want. You're his flesh and blood.
Yeah.
But then also, you're a paid driver, your dad owns a team, it's like nepotism, and he's paid for the seat. But Lance is a good driver. He is worthy of being in Formula 1. Again, like John said there, will he beat Perez? No, he won't. Will he beat, if he had, like, say, Ocon as a teammate, former Racing Point driver, Force India driver, will he beat him? Again, that is very hard to say. I'm going to probably lean on no. And would he beat Nico Hülkenberg, of course, the Force India driver, who we said there before, partner Sergio Perez for a number of years. Sergio beated him. Would Lance beat Nico? No. Would Paul di Resta? No, I'm going a bit too far. Yeah, that's the thing. He's a good driver. He's not great. He does need something to break out and show that he is, very strong in F1. And like we just said there with Sergio Perez. Well, firstly, actually, I don't think Lance will be fired. I don't mean that in terms of Lawrence won't fire him, because again, like Jordan said there, and it was said on Netflix, one of my favourite quotes by Chris Metland, he says, Lawrence is the businessman over anything. He will sack his son in a heartbeat to keep his money or not lose his money. But I don't think Lance is going to get fired, because I think he is a good driver. And of course, yes, I think if Sergio was as bad as Lance, Sergio would go before Lance, if that makes sense. Of course, that's just how family works. Anyways, heading into the final statement of this episode, and it is an incredible one. And this is the title of the episode. It comes out from Sam O'Gara, again, someone who has commented under some of ours before. And he comes in with an absolute belter. This is wow. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that Top Gear episode where the train beats the car and James May says to Jeremy Clarkson, "You've just ruined Top Gear." Because this is what this quote might do to the F1 debate show. And it is, Formula 2 is a better product than F1. The races are much more enjoyable most of the time. Is F2 better than F1? Oh my god. Just to save this show, John, I have to disagree.
Yes, you're gonna have. Yeah, I think you are gonna have to. We'll both have to definitely disagree on this one. Definitely.
Formula 2 is great. It really is enjoyable. It's kind of like the championship to the Premier League, and the championship runs longer. Of course, that doesn't happen in Formula 2. It's a shorter season, but the championship runs longer. There's more teams, which of course is the same in Formula 2. There's more drivers and more teams, more excitement for that factor. Of course, there's no promotion or relegation like there is in the championship, but in that way, all the kind of it's not guaranteed. But of course, drivers do come from Formula 2. We don't see Formula 2 drivers go down to Formula 3, but you know what I mean, though, they can still be easily dropped from F2 like they are F1. That's the thing. I think there's younger drivers in F2. They've got more blood. They've got more aspiration to get to F1. They've got a point to prove. F1 is the pinnacle. You can't go higher than F1. Of course, you can gain things in F1, wins and stuff like that, World Championships. But in F2, that's not the pinnacle. You've got less fans, you've got less money, you've got less exposure. And you know that you can possibly get to F1. You might have teams that are in F1, smelling at you, like George Russell did when he was driving for Dams. He had Mercedes behind him. So obviously, Mick Schumacher driving for Prima. He's got Ferrari behind him. It's the temptation is so good, and that's what's going to push you to do some incredible driving. In terms of fans watching it, we might see some very good driving because, of course, the cars are very evenly matched. There's no there's less things that they can play about with the cars. So there's less things that the drivers can change on the steering wheel. I don't think there's any NGUK or H or anything like that. There's a DRS and that's it. The drivers are younger, sometimes maybe less experienced, so it's better wheel-to-wheel action. We see more, we see good wheel-to-wheel racing. Again, obviously, it's more special in F1, of course, because you've got Leclerc and Verstappen and people like that, more experience. But you still get some good ones in F2. You see incidents. Going into a first corner in F1, sometimes you think there's going to be no danger. Like, again, I don't think there might be in Austria this year. Again, don't know that. Don't tell us. We'll see for ourselves. But again, with F2, you kind of always know something's going to happen, and it's exciting to see. Everyone is fighting for one seat. It's absolutely incredible to see. So the drivers definitely get a tick for some of the best entertainment we see, and sometimes yes, it is bordering on more entertaining because, as I've just said there, the cars are more evenly matched and things like that. As I say, Jordan, there, we have to say F1 for the channel. But it is incredibly exciting, Formula 2 for sure. Also as well, I saw this comment that Sam put, and I was like, this has got to go into the show at the same time as the new Formula 2 intro came out, and that was the bomb. We shared it on our Twitter page. That was absolutely incredible. And I think I saw that and I was like, that's it. They are better than F1 when they did that. Jordan, again, I think if you said agree, I think that will be it. Unfortunately, you'd have to leave. No, Formula 1 obviously better than Formula 2. But instead of seeing why Formula 1 isn't as good, sorry again, instead of seeing Formula 1 is better, talk about why Formula 2 is so good and kind of why Sam would say this, because obviously, quote makes sense for sure, and it's a great agree or disagree topic, and you probably have Formula 2 only fans, it's not stupid to say. So why would Formula 2 be up there competing against Formula 1, like you said in this tweet?
I think why people really enjoy Formula 2 is because the cars are the exact same, made by Dallara, and they're shared by all the teams that are there. So it's not really much down to the car, it's more down to the driver's skill. Now, of course, you've got better drivers than others in Formula 2. Not everyone's going to be on the same pace, setting the same exact lap times every single session. But one of the best things about Formula 2 is everyone in there is hungry to get to Formula 1, because that is ultimately what the goal is at the end of the day. That is where you want to be. You worked hard in kart and putting in the hours, travelling all the distance, and then going off to single seat, flying to Europe, or if you live in Europe, that's brilliant. But if you're from like Brazil or the US or even Australia, you've got to fly to Europe. That's a long way away from home at a very young age to make it big, in Europe and hopefully in motorsport. But also, but like I say, like everyone's hungry to win the championship and get themselves into Formula 1. So of course there's going to be more risk. There's going to be more lunges, because they want to be in a higher position and obviously show the other the bosses of Formula 1. This is how I can race. This is what I can do. And that does produce some really good racing. There's some good crashes in there. There's some good incidents. There's little debates you can talk about. And I think in some degree, in some situations, the racing is more entertaining because, like I said, the drivers are more hungrier than they are in Formula 1, because you referenced there the championship in football there, Lyle. Because in the championship, there's a goal at the end of it. There's a goal to get promoted to the Premier League. That's brilliant. But when you get to the Premier League, there is a big divide between the top and the midfield. So ultimately, when you're in the Premier League, it's survive? Is that your goal, really? You're not going to get European spots or anything like that. If you're just a basic mediocre midfield. So you're not exactly going to play to your heart's content, because it's we're fine, we've got nothing to play for here. But in the championship, there's more to play for. Not because obviously you can go down a division, but ultimately the goal is to get promoted. And not only that, there's also other, there could be Premier League clubs watching you as a player to bring them, so you can get to the Premier League without even your team getting promoted. So you've got to play well, to show everyone what type of a player you actually are. And it's the same with Formula 1, because not every driver in Formula 2 will get to Formula 1. There'll be other kinds of motorsport that they'll get into. So if they think, right, okay, maybe Formula 1 is a bit far-fetched, but there is other sports I am interested in going in, so I need to show them that this is how I can race. So it's like a CV, almost like a real life CV. This is what I can do. This is what I've got to offer. Do you like it or not? And if you're not performing and you're not up to speed and you're crashing all the time and what have you, then you're not going to get picked. But if you're performing well and you are doing well, maybe money is more of a factor in some scenarios. But I'm more talking about the racing here. Then yeah, of course, Formula 2 is really good. But really, the whole thing is disagree, and that's because for me, Formula 1, it's just better. It's faster, it's quicker, there's better drivers in there, and yes, like I said before, sometimes racing in Formula 1, it does get a bit boring because there's more to save, like fuel and engine and the power units and stuff like that, and tyres, so that does put in a bit of a curveball. Unlike Formula 2, there's not really that lot to do. Like, maybe there are some tyre and fuel saving, but it's not as extreme as what is in Formula 1. So in that aspect, then yeah, maybe Formula 2 does kind of tilt the scales a bit, but it's Formula 1. If I had to choose, alright, okay, you can get to watch loads of Formula 2 or loads of Formula 1, but you can't watch, either or the other, you know what I mean? I would choose Formula 1 all day long, because it's a brilliant sport. It's an absolutely incredible sport, and you've got some of the best drivers in the world and some of the best up and coming talent in Formula One, and well deserved to be there as well. The future is looking good with F1. There is a lot of changes that need doing to F1 to improve the quality of racing, but at the same time, definitely for me, Formula One topples Formula 2 in that aspect. Yeah. But I do love Formula 2. I'm not going to slate it in any kind of way because it is a brilliant, brilliant feeder series to F1. And not only that, F3, I'm going to give you a little mention as well because you are also a really, really good series. And they've got 30 cars. Now, I like 30 cars. Happy days. That's a good round number. 30 cars in F3. Happy days. So that's my opinion on that, and I'm pretty sure. I know there are a few that will agree with F2 is better than F1 because of there's better racing and stuff like that, which, hey, that's fine by me. If you like Formula 2 better than Formula 1, then fair enough, yeah, but by law we can't really say F2 is better than F1 because we're the F1 debate show. Of course, but that's the thing, that if we did agree with it, then of course then we would say it, but we're not saying that because we have to say disagree because we don't have to. That's our honest opinion. I'll tell you what though, Lyle, we've had some really, really, really good opinions this week. Looking forward to, of course, doing them more in the future. So yeah, it's been a really, really good one. Have you enjoyed yourself this week, Lyle? Discussing more opinions on agree or disagree? It's a brilliant series. I love this.
Of course, as always, we get some really good ones from you guys as well. I really enjoyed last week as well. Just going back there, about the Austria Grand Prix last weekend, Austria related as well, and of course we'll be doing it next time when we get into the double rounds. But yeah, just absolutely incredible as well. And number 10, fast growing series. to use a quote that you used back in 2016, John, on episode 4, you went, growing by the minute, as they say. So is this series growing by the minute? Yes, of course it is. We hope that you guys are enjoying it as well. And that is obviously the end. Thank you very much for watching. Number 11 will be coming, of course, every single week. Keep on track with our social medias, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, mainly Twitter. That is like the main one that we use. We put out every single week on a race week. We put out basically the thumbnail agree or disagree, big red and green, bit like the thumbnail that we have on this video. Comment underneath your big, bold, crazy statements, and yeah, we will hopefully read them out. The crazier the better. That's what we're going to say. The crazier the better. Things like that. Things like Formula 2 is better than Formula 1. We absolutely love things like that. Obviously, thank you very much for watching this episode. If you do like what you see around here, please like and subscribe. We have so much more content coming your way throughout the Formula 1 season in 2020, the very quirky season. Again, on Twitter, we do post weekly schedules of what we have coming up because it's very, very hectic. On Wednesday, we have our F1 24/7 news segment coming out again, as always. And then we will be doing a preview on Thursday, though it will be a smaller one because of, obviously, the Austrian Grand Prix being done again. And then an F1 debate show on Saturday, as always. We have a very, very, very big announcement coming up on Twitter, so make sure that you go and head over to our Twitter. Handle will be on the screen right now. Go and give us a like, go and give us a follow, because we have some big news coming up very, very shortly, and something that may entertain a lot of you guys. You might have been fans of us for a very long time, or might just be starting out, but I guarantee whoever you are, you will like what's coming up very, very soon. And of course, we do hope that you just enjoy everything that we have coming up. But that is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, what you're doing. Watch what you are doing. Hopefully you enjoy the season and you enjoyed Austria yesterday. We know we did, even though we haven't seen it yet. So thank you very much for watching this episode, and until next time, guys, we'll see you later.
See you later, guys.